Chapter 22.
The remainder of the autumn term saw a noticeable reduction in friendly interactions from Gryffindors, along with every other house and year. Draco Malfoy consoled himself, believing it to be a blessing that everyone instinctively attributed Seamus Finnegan's mysterious plight to him. The entire school buzzed with chatter about Draco, yet it wasn't about speculation of his identity, nor the controversial howler from his father. The effect was felt mainly through the increased distance people maintained from him, notably among his fellow first-year Slytherins. Whether this was out of fear or a pragmatic choice to avoid associating with a potentially scandalous pureblood was unclear. Few dared to directly accuse him, allowing his notoriety for reclusiveness and uncanny academic prowess for a newcomer to be overshadowed by a more sinister aura. This reputation made some students, both older and younger, treat him as if he were some shadowy figure haunting the corridors. Those with the audacity to confront him on the matter were mainly those with direct knowledge of the curse, a group that included Severus, who had created the curse, and the cluster of Gryffindors present during the fateful duel with Potter. Curiously enough, none amongst them recalled the specific incantation Draco had uttered. They also couldn't approach the professors, as admitting involvement in the illicit duel would implicate them all. Nevertheless, all five confronted him well before Finnegan regained his voice. Severus led the charge, pulling Draco aside during herbology through a disgruntled second-year Ravenclaw messenger. So, Severus began, offering Draco the opportunity to confess himself. Receiving no response, he continued, "This morning, I was called to the hospital wing to attend to a speechless Seamus Finnegan, afflicted with a peculiar curse that leaves his tongue glued to the roof of his mouth. A spell, as it happens, crafted by a former Slytherin and known predominantly within our circles. McGonagall understands the boy had a disagreement with you. Any truth to this link?" Draco couldn't help but smile at Severus's expertly applied sarcasm, though it clearly irritated Severus further. "Enjoying yourself, are you? Is this the legacy you wish to craft for yourself here? Already embroiled in sinister magic, yet at odds with your father?" Severus leaned in, his gaze intense enough to put Draco on full alert. "Did you know this spell is notoriously difficult for anyone but the caster to break?" Draco nodded, having been unaware until then. "And that your head of house has advised against any attribution of involvement without solid evidence, stating the curse is beyond his identification capabilities." Draco shook his head. "Thank you, sir. Do you think the professors might manage to lift it on their own?" "It is possible. However, should they struggle or delay too much?" Severus's eyes fixed on Draco, yet he felt no mental probing, reassuring him of at least one ally within the castle walls. Could one assume that the originator of such magic might show clemency in due time and reverse this predicament, despite its justifiability? Draco's smile widened, brighter than it had been in months. "Oh, who can say?" he remarked with feigned indifference. "If someone brought such a fate upon themselves by talking too much, well, it stands to reason. But perhaps the malevolent sorcerer might find some compassion for the chatterbox. Perhaps by Christmas. Or maybe not. Really, it's up to the individual." The Gryffindors approached him sequentially, each striving to assure Draco that Seamus would promise silence regarding the incident. Their uniformity suggested collaboration. Their arguments were similar, though Weasley's midweek entreaty surprisingly resonated, sharing an anecdote about his brother Charlie's coming out. It didn't persuade Draco to relent, but it did elevate his regard for the Weasleys. On Thursday, Longbottom made his case like a rehearsed speech, his hands visibly trembling. When Draco offered to review his potions essay, Neville blushed furiously, muttered something about bubotuber pus, and dashed away at such a speed that Madame Pants swiftly put him in detention. They fared better than Granger. Her earlier rambling on Tuesday, saturated with caveats and acknowledging Finnegan's error, only reinforced Draco's sense of self-righteousness. Silent throughout Finnegan's mute predicament, Granger still joined their study group, despite what it must have cost her among her Gryffindor peers. Draco amusedly imagined her mindset, Oh, poor Seamus, but it mustn't disrupt my potion scores. And when Draco teased the charm on her bracelet, offering knowledge about the Yentrao and the duality of Goddess Kali, she barely lasted a day before demanding the explanation. Last was Potter, who had unwittingly identified Finnegan the previous night. By then, he likely rued revealing that detail to Draco. Draco expected Potter to approach sooner, but when he finally did, he cleverly chose a secluded spot as if prepared to extract answers forcibly. He waited for Draco to complete his surreptitious Sunday broom ride around the Quidditch pitch before cornering him in the broom shed. It's been a week since Seamus fell silent. Don't you think that's enough? Draco faced Potter with serene composure, ready to maintain the mystery as he had with the others, exuding a calm reminiscent of some enlightened deity. In hindsight, Draco never envisioned himself trapped in such tight quarters with Potter, nor did he expect Potter to swat his hand aside, rudely grabbing a school broom from him and placing it carelessly on a rack. In response, Draco feigned hurt, rubbing the back of his hand dramatically and tossing his head in defiance, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Is that supposed to be some existential query?" he quipped. Potter drew a deep breath, his eyes narrowing on Draco with intent focus from their close proximity. "Draco?" I asked. "Draco, am I an idiot in your opinion?" Draco couldn't resist the opening, despite knowing better. "It's not really a subject for a philosophical discourse," he chuckled, leaning lazily against a broom rack and resting his cheek on his hand. "I reckon there's a straight answer to your second inquiry." With another steady breath, Potter seemed to muster the strength required to restrain himself from tearing Draco apart, akin to facing a malevolent force. "What is it, Potter? Planning to corner me until you force it out of me? You never could. Is that your wish?" Potter interjected, shoving Draco against the rough wooden wall. Merlin's beard. Had Potter grown both in height and stature since they'd met at Ollivander's? "I assured you, Draco, I wouldn't strike you. I've apologized for it. Plus, I know it was partly my fault for involving Seamus. I assumed from your talk of doing the right thing that you meant it, but I understand it now. You shouldn't have blabbed it. Ron and I shouldn't have let it out. But haven't you proven your point yet? Enough time has passed. Seamus doesn't deserve." "But you did say it, Potter. Once a Death Eater, always a Death Eater." "Spare me," Draco hissed abruptly, "your insights on Finnegan's deserts," lifting his chin defiantly. Potter's face contorted with a glimpse of the boy capable of using Sectum Sempra, hidden beneath the lingering youthful innocence. "Is this how far you'll stoop, Draco, when your Death Eater father is displeased?" "You've nowhere to go for Christmas either," Draco retorted, immediately regretting it, though it was only November 17th, long before the sign-up to stay at Hogwarts. It felt like a safe assumption, trusting Potter to feel only indignation at Draco's barb, without probing deeper. Salazar, how he remembered taunting Potter that first year for having nowhere to go at Christmas, for being unwanted. How the roles had shifted. Draco was sure Potter would strike him and felt the adrenaline surge in his veins, oddly filled more with anticipation than fear. But Potter's hand only smacked the shed wall, matching his conflicted expression. "You know nothing about me, Draco." "And why?" Draco whispered, tempting Potter to either withdraw or strike. "What could ever convince you that you know anything about me?" "I saw you in Ollivander's. Saw the tears. I recognize you're not the facade you wear." "Who are you claiming that to be?" Draco sneered, though the expression faltered, stripped away as effortlessly as each defense Draco built over 18 years faded when Potter observed. "You're not your father." Potter must have noticed how deeply the words resonated. He didn't retreat but maintained their locked gaze, as close as a duel, so near, Potter's eyes were almost entirely dark. "Draco." Potter tried again, but it seemed Draco was rendered silent by the implication. Draco shoved Potter aside and fled. He ignored Potter's calls echoing behind him. Next morning, at breakfast, Dumbledore announced that Professor Snape had concocted a potion to cure Seamus Finnegan, who was expected to recover fully. Underneath the irritation caused by the Gryffindor cheers, Draco felt relief. He made sure none could see it, though. Finnegan returned before Christmas, and his pointed refusal to meet Draco's eyes was an unanticipated bonus. As was Finnegan's newfound status as Severus Snape's least favored student, surpassing even Longbottom and Potter. Draco, ready to threaten Potter and Weasley with a Langlock jinx of their own if they dared speak of or to him, found them keeping an exceptional distance, as if fearing he were contagious. He briefly considered asking Granger if Potter ever mentioned him, but dismissed it as childish. When Severus came around with a roster for students staying, Draco didn't understand why he bothered to ask him. It was no secret that Father didn't want Draco home, confirmed by Mother's silence. He took it as a directive to not answer the howler. It turned into one of his longest conversations in weeks, Theo included, along with Severus and Granger. Theo entered the dorm to inform him that Severus was collecting names in the common room. "Draco, you're staying for Christmas, right? Snape's taking names, so." "He knows," Draco called out with feigned ease, lazily tossing his wand up and down, envisioning an enchanted mistletoe ensnaring Finnegan with moaning Myrtle. The thought amused him, imagining Myrtle wouldn't mind, the love-struck ghost. "Theo, think mistletoe affects ghosts?"
"What?"
Theo pondered, clearly less fun than he used to be. "Draco, I really don't know, but Snape said those who want to be listed need to tell him now, so." Draco sighed and released his curtains, strolling out in pajamas to face a common room brimming with knowing eyes. Severus stood before the snake fireplace, quill and parchment in hand, watching Draco with slight amusement. "Really?" Draco muttered, snatching the quill and writing his name boldly across the page, noting there were few others. A soft sound, perhaps a chuckle, caught his attention, making him whirl toward its source. "What?" he snapped, and it was Marcus Flint. He was taken aback when even Flint sprang up from his usual seat, raising his hands with nervous stutters of apology. "For coughing."
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with more audiobooks. Happy listening!